How does genetic modification work? Well, genetic engineering is faster than traditional methods of breeding and allows for the introduction of very precise changes to genetic material, resulting in desirable recessive traits becoming dominant traits.
We have been modifying the genetics of plants and animals since agriculture and the domestication of animals began. The anti-GMO activists counter. Nature never moves DNA from one species to another, therefore GMOs are unnatural. Not so. Genes have been moving across species boundaries since life began. Bacteria routinely carry fragments of DNA from one species to another, and that DNA is sometimes incorporated into the genes of the host species. This random movement of genetic material has been one of the driving forces in the development of species.
We have to go back in time to about 10,000 years ago when farmers first started cultivating plants. Farmers started breeding two different types of plants together to form hybrids. These hybrids usually contain desirable traits that the farmers found advantageous. Example of this is corn. Corn used to be called a crop called teosinte. This was very inedible and it was made of kernels. This crop was bred together with other desirable crops to create the starchy treat that is known today. Nowadays, due to the availability of technology and the better understanding of science, there are more and more discoveries and inventions in GM food, such as the super chicken eggs, non-browning apples, fast-growing salmon, and the Enviro pigs.
The benefits of genetic modification include insect resistance, environmental protection, and more nutrition. Genetic modification has occurred for centuries across the globe, but only recently has become precise. The traditional methods of genetic modification include selective breeding, which allows owners to get desired traits in plants and animals. The genetic modification of today, however, involves the transplantation of genes from different species. Sometimes these species are completely unrelated.
Okay.
Genes used for genetic modification come from a range of different organisms, such as plants, bacteria, and animal species. Genetically modified foods have been altered in order to make them more resistant to insect pests. Reports from the University of San Diego indicate that certain toxins can be added to crops, thereby making them insect resistant, but the crops themselves will become harmless to humans. This would reduce the amount of pesticide chemicals used on plants, reducing exposure to pests. Oklahoma State University reports that the increase of genetically modified crops often requires less time, less tools, and less chemicals. This may reduce environmental pollution, carbon dioxide emissions, which are just nothing but greenhouse gases, and erosion of soil. This can generally help the overall beauty and health of the environment surrounding farms. It will also contribute to the sustenance of better air and water quality, which can indirectly benefit humans' well-being. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations reports that certain genetically modified foods have been engineered to contain more vitamins and minerals that will help people receive their daily dose. It can also play a major role in battling malnutrition in the developing world. The United Nations advises that global vitamin A deficiencies can be battled using vitamin A supplemented rice.
Unfortunately, I'm not too fond of the idea of GM foods because there are many disadvantages. In the previous video, we've shown that genetically modified food are usually inedible items that are combined with a desirable trait from another plant, then enabled it to become an edible item. Examples of this are the flavor saver tomato and the BT cotton. These were produced through the process of artificial selection or selective breeding. Artificial selection or selective breeding is when any consumer breeds one plant with another plant that has a desirable trait, and this produces a hybrid. This hybrid is very advantageous to its consumer, and because it has his desired traits. An example of this is the BT cotton. The BT cotton is very advantageous to its consumer because it can be cultivated in high numbers and it has the ability to produce its own pesticide. However, advantages come with disadvantages. Examples of disadvantages are GM foods are bad for the environment, GM foods produce superpests, GM foods can cause allergic reactions, and GM foods effects are irreversible. Genetically engineered food may cause fatal allergic reactions. A study published by the New England Journal of Medicine proved that individuals who were allergic to basil nuts suffered the same allergic reaction when they consumed genetically modified soybeans that contained basil nut genes. Under normal circumstances, consumers manage food allergies by avoiding which foods they know will cause allergic reactions. If genetically engineered foods are not labeled with the source of the foreign genes, consumers will not be able to identify these potential allergens. It has also been proved that GM foods are not only detrimental to animals' health, but to a human's health as well, as a recent study published in February 2012 came with results that indicated that the BT toxins in GM crops can kill human kidney cells. Another recent study also stated that after GM food is consumed, remnants of the BT toxins is left in the stomach, which causes the stomach to produce pesticides. 93% of pregnant mothers in the UK had traces of pesticide in their stomach, while 80% of their fetus had traces of pesticide.
BT is designed to break open the stomach of insects and kill them. So when the doctors hear about this, that BT corn was introduced into our diet in the mid-90s, they say this may explain the increase in gastrointestinal problems that they're seeing in their practice. But the EPA says, don't worry about BT toxin. It's completely harmless to human beings and animals because it only affects insects. However, a study that came out in February 2012 showed that the EPA got it wrong. It does break open little pores in human cells, and it might cause the same kind of disruption in our guts as it's causing in of pregnant women tested in Canada had the BT toxin in their blood, as well as in the blood of 80% of their unborn fetuses. The authors of the study suggested that the BT toxin came as a result of eating the milk and meat of animals that ate Monsanto's BT corn. But I think a more plausible explanation is that the BT toxin was produced continuously